In the shadows of a small town, nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, stood a house that whispered secrets to the night. The Wilsons had lived there for generations, but now something dark had taken root. Shantel, a tall, enigmatic demonologist, arrived at their doorstep, her eyes gleaming with determination. As she entered, Maria, the Wilsons' beautiful 23-year-old daughter, watched from the shadows, her face a mask of fear and curiosity. The air grew thick with tension as Shantel began her work, uncovering layers of malevolence that had seeped into the very walls. Days turned to nights, and nights to nightmares. The entity that haunted the house grew stronger, feeding on the family's terror. But Shantel stood firm, her knowledge a beacon in the darkness. With each passing moment, Maria found herself drawn to the demonologist's strength and courage. In a final, heart-stopping confrontation, Shantel faced the demon head-on, her voice ringing out with ancient words of power. The house shook, shadows writhed, and then silence. The evil was vanquished, leaving behind a family forever changed and a love blossoming between Shantel and Maria, born from the ashes of their shared ordeal. In the quiet town of Millbrook, nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, there lived a woman named Shantel. Known for her towering intellect and piercing gaze, she was the go-to demonologist when things went bump in the night. One fateful evening, as shadows lengthened and an eerie mist crept through the streets, Shantel received a desperate call from the Rossi family. Their Victorian mansion, perched atop a hill overlooking the town, had been plagued by inexplicable occurrences. Objects moved on their own, disembodied whispers echoed through empty halls, and a malevolent presence seemed to lurk in every corner. But it was their daughter, Maria, who bore the brunt of the supernatural assault. As Shantel approached the imposing iron gates of the Rossi estate, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and the very ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with an ancient, evil heartbeat. She steeled herself, knowing that this would be no ordinary case. The door creaked open before Shantel could knock, revealing Maria's haggard face. Once a vibrant beauty, the 23-year-old now looked pale and drawn, her eyes sunken and haunted. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help us." Shantel stepped inside, immediately assaulted by the oppressive atmosphere. The walls seemed to close in, and shadows danced at the edge of her vision. She met the rest of the family: Maria's parents, Antonio and Sophia, and her younger brother, Marco. Their fear was palpable, hanging in the air like a thick fog. As night fell, the true horror of the Rossi's situation became clear. Furniture flew across rooms, shattering against walls. Unearthly screams echoed through the house, and a foul stench permeated every corner. But it was Maria who suffered the most. Before Shantel's eyes, the young woman's body contorted unnaturally, her eyes rolling back as she spoke in tongues long forgotten. Shantel knew she had to act fast. Drawing upon her vast knowledge of the occult, she began to prepare for a ritual of exorcism. But as she delved deeper into the house's history, she uncovered a dark secret. The land upon which the mansion stood was once an ancient burial ground, desecrated by the Rossi's ancestors in their greed for prime real estate. The demon that haunted the family was no ordinary spirit, but an ancient entity, furious at the violation of its resting place. It had latched on to Maria, feeding off her youth and vitality. Shantel realized that a simple exorcism wouldn't suffice. She would need to strike a bargain with the entity, to appease its anger and save the family. As the clock struck midnight, Shantel began her dangerous work. Candles flickered in a sacred circle as she chanted in long-dead languages. The house shook with the demon's rage, but Shantel stood firm. Hours passed in a blur of supernatural combat, with Shantel matching the demon's power with her own indomitable will. Just when it seemed the battle was lost, A ray of dawn broke through the windows. The demon's power waned, and Shantel seized her chance. With a final mighty incantation, she bound the entity, not banishing it, but forging a pact. The land would be restored to its original purpose, a sanctuary for the dead, in exchange for the family's safety. As the first light of morning bathed the house, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Maria's eyes cleared, color returning to her cheeks. The family wept with relief, embracing each other and their savior. But as the adrenaline of the night faded, Shantel found herself locking eyes with Maria. In that moment, a spark ignited between them, born of shared trauma and mutual admiration. In the days that followed, as the Rossi family worked to honor their new pact with the spirit world, Shantel found herself drawn back to the mansion. She and Maria grew closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. What had begun as a horrifying ordeal blossomed into something beautiful and unexpected. Months later, as autumn leaves fell around them, Shantel and Maria stood hand in hand in the newly consecrated grove behind the mansion. The land, once a source of terror, now radiated peace. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger, their love a beacon of hope in a world where shadows still lurked. As they shared a tender kiss, Shantel knew that while evil would always exist, so too would love and courage. And in that balance, she had found her true calling, not just as a demonologist, but as a protector of those who faced the unknown. With Maria by her side, she was ready for whatever darkness the future might hold.